Okay, now it's time for you to try some on your own. Here are 3 practice problems. When you finish writing them down, pause the tape, and then when you're finished, check your answers. If you have trouble with them, then you need to find a math tutor or instructor to give you some help. Okay, we want to find the missing value. The first example, the first problem is 12 over 18 equals n over 9. The second one is 3 over 15 equals m over 18. The third example is 5 over 6 is equal to 2.3 over y. Work those and then check your answers. Okay, the answers are, number 1 is 24, number 2 is 3 3/5, or 3.6. It doesn't matter which form you give it in, either one would be acceptable. And the third answer is 2 76/100, or 2.76. If you had problems or didn't get this, try to rework it. And if you still have a question, find someone in the math lab. This can also be used to determine which of 2 ratios or fractions is the larger or smaller. For 2 positive fractions, a over b and c over d, 3 things are possible. If the product AD is equal to the product BC, then the fractions or ratios are equivalent. Notice that there are cross product AD and BC. If the product AD is greater than the product BC, then the first ratio is greater than the second ratio. If the product AD is less than the product BC, then the first ratio is less than the second ratio. And notice this works for fractions because that's what a ratio is. This is in fraction form. Want to place less than, greater than, or equal in the blank to make a true statement. First example, I want to know how 13 over 39 compares to 5 over 15. Well, the first thing I want to do is find the product of 13 times 15. The product of 13 times 15 is 195. Then I want to find the product of 39 times 5. The product of 39 times 5 is also 195. Since 195 is equivalent to 195, the ratios are equal. So the correct thing we're going to put in here, less than, greater than, or equal, is going to be equal. Another way of asking the same type of question would be, which is smaller of these 2 ratios? 1.05 to 3.00 or 2 to 2.5? Well, what we're going to do is put them in fractional form, 1.05 to 3.00 and 2 to 2.5. Then we want to check their cross products. We want to multiply 1.05 times 2.5, which gives us 2.625. Then we want to multiply 3 times 2, which gives us 6. And we notice that the first ratio, 2.625, is less than 6. Therefore, 1.05 to 3.00 is the smaller. And notice again, we use the cross product 1.05. In other words, we crossed the extremes and compared them to the means. When the product of the extremes is less than the product of the extremes, our ratios are going to be in less than. The smaller one's going to be on the left. Okay, it's time for you to try some practice problems again. We want to fill in the blank with less than, greater than, or equal to. Our first problem is 11 to 6 compares how with 121 to 66. And we want to know, how does 11 to 6 compare with 121 to 66? Our second example is we want to determine which of these two fractions is the larger. Is 1/5 or 15 over 25 the larger? And we're going to use the cross products test to determine which one is the larger ratio. Our third practice problem is to fill in the blank again with less than, greater than, or equal to. And our first ratio is 55.2 to 398. Compares how with 27.4 to over 175. Okay, how does 55.2 over 398 compare with 27.4 to 175? Okay, stop the tape, work the problems, and then check your answers. And the answers are, the number one, the two ratios were equal. The values were the same. On number two, this second ratio was the larger. 15 over 25 was larger than 1/5 because the product of the extremes was smaller than the product of the means. And number three, the first ratio was less than the second ratio. If you didn't get one of these right, go back and recheck it. If you have a question, remember, you can always ask a math tutor or math instructor for some help. This ends the tape on this session on seeing if two ratios are proportional and how to solve proportions. If you need some extra work, you can always go back and look at the tape, or you can ask anyone in the math tutor or math instructor for some help. You should be ready now to do the problems, the second activity on Unit 4.